on, because life don't stop lifing just because
It's on.
you need it to. It's always lifing, but just making a decision to let go some things in life. I could just you ever just did some stuff and it's just like it's a whole different weight just like lifted off your shoulders, and I'm just seeing just how different I've been able to be in the past few weeks with just letting go of something in particular. And I'm like, oh, I just feel like a whole different person. I feel like a whole different person. I'm telling
I'm
you,
so
this
happy for you.
that job, I didn't realize just how much it had a
Hey,
hold.
Taylor.
Hey Taylor, I just didn't know how much of a hold it had on me until I
Right,
said,
he
you
had
know
your
what?
behind in a chokehold.
It had me in such a way where I didn't even recognize myself anymore. And I'm feeling so different in these past few weeks. We winding down. I ain't figured it all things out yet, but I'm not worried. I'm not worried. I have the weirdest calmness. Just this, it was just time for that move. Yes, Taylor, it's been a while. We have missed y'all. Thank you all. Like one thing I will say about our We Gon Talk family, because y'all are family, even though y'all
Right,
viewing us, y'all are family. Y'all 100% have so much grace, because I'm not always in the space to be on here and to have that or provide that healing environment. But whenever we get back on here, y'all jump right on in like ain't no time has passed. So I love all of y'all that's hopping in here with us today. Thank you all for joining us tonight for our back to school talk. We're going to talk about trauma and the trauma of going back to school for our babies, trauma for us. I know me and Nat was just talking about that, and
yes.
how it can be a whole lot of stress on parents, and sometimes we're not aware of how we're transferring that stress to our babies, and we're sending them off to school for their day, and they're having all of these things that's affecting them. And so I am actually glad that you all are with us. Be looking out, because also in this conversation today, I am hoping to build an empathy bridge and to have awareness for just exactly what children can be taking with them to school. So
Yeah.
I'll be launching a social media campaign. I want you to retweet, tweet, share, be looking out for that. We'll be sharing that hashtag at the end of the show or throughout the show. But we just really want you all to remember that these babies are up against a lot. They are coming to school with a lot of things that they're going through. We've been having some really amazing conversations. The last two shows, we were talking to kids that were sharing about some of the things that they're going through each and every day that
Yeah.
parents may not be aware of. So just imagine what type of stressors, what type of life obstacles these children are, and going through each day, and then bringing that stuff to school with them. So we all need to have empathy, and we need to build that bridge with our babies, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. So
Oh, we
welcome,
gonna
y'all.
talk about it.
We gonna talk. I see some of these comments. It says mamas be crying and watching their baby's favorite cartoon until they come home. That was me. I ain't gonna even front. I used to love me
Not
some Back
watching the
Morgan.
baby's cartoons and crying till
It's
they come
fine.
home.
Let me tell you, it was times, especially once I got Kyron in school, it would be times I would be sitting on the couch and I would realize, because I worked overnight at the time, I done missed it. I done watched 3 episodes of Diego. I done sang all of the songs for the Backyardigans. We
Oh,
watching,
Backyardigans was fire though.
Bubble Guppies. I done these Wonder Pets that get on my Wonder nerve. Them Wonder Pets get on my nerve. I'm so sick of them. They always in trouble. They always need some help. But I be sitting there for hours, just like, now why am I still watching this? Just why am I still watching this? I agree with you, Taylor. I get it. She says my
Taylor,
mama
that,
said
that sounds like it came from a real place. Sis. I know you ain't got no kids. Did you watch your mama go through this or something? Like that came from a real,
she
real
knows
place.
something about something.
Right. She knows something.
She
She got
knows
some
something about
inside scoop.
something, because all facts. I done did that so many times
I'm telling you
where
about the
I'm in here.
backyardigans.
It's been hours past, and I'm in here watching and singing all of these songs. I could still sing most of the Backyardigan hits. Okay, that was my show.
They used to be live on the Backyardigans. Like
You know,
live.
my favorite one was the spy episode where it's like, shh, shh, secret, secret. See, y'all didn't know I had that in me. I know.
You ain't know I had it in me.
You know, I got bars due to the Backyardigans. Well, let's jump into this. Yes, Gracie's Corner. I just found Gracie's Corner.
Gracie is lit.
Lit.
It's funny because now social media is starting to find out about Gracie. So like everybody doing these videos, dancing to the music and stuff, how they be like bopping, like adult bopping to Gracie's Corner. I've been on Gracie's Corner though on the low, but I got there. Shout out to Tatiana and Kelly because she put me on.
I didn't know anything about it until I saw it on Facebook. I had never heard of it, nothing. But when I started seeing that one song with the I was like,
Gracie deserves all the clout though. She deserves all the
you.
clout because she goes hard. Okay.
I see. These
Her
kids
row the boat. I don't know if y'all is up on the row the boat, but she be like, "Mama row the boat, mommy row the boat, daddy row the boat, daddy row the boat." Yo, it's live. Gracie be turned. And Motown Magic on Netflix. For all my old souls out there, Motown Magic on Netflix was Jaleel's first favorite show. That was his first birthday theme. He know all the Motown cuts. Then we got a record player and had the Motown greatest hit record playing on repeat at the beginning of COVID. Okay, my baby is an old soul.
Doing it right. You doing it right, because these kids up in this house be talking about the music just sounds so old. It turns my stomach, and I know in that moment I failed as a parent because I be in here still listening to. Just yesterday I was doing the dishes. It was like 9:00, and I was loading the dishwasher, and I was in there singing because one of my favorite Al Green songs is Simply Beautiful, and I don't know why my YouTube music just was playing all the old stuff. So I was having my Luther going. I had my Al Green going. There was some Isley Brothers up in there. And I'm just in there singing. Like, I know all the songs. Let them little children come up out here. It sounds so old.
Girl, at least they let you sing. Jaleel be like, mommy.
I know he don't say. He put you on like
mommy.
that.
I be like, dig, son. It makes me happy though. Can I sing? I know I can't, but can I?
Children have zero filter.
You be like, mom.
They give zero cares. If you suck, they gonna tell you.
Not dead, sis.
Now I ain't say nothing to you when you jumped up and spent around and had to have my attention to show me that lame move. I didn't say that to you.
I ain't say nothing, but I try to hit a note and it's a problem, mommy.
Kids care not. They care not about our feelings. Let's hop in this conversation. I am encouraging you all. Please share if you have never shared one of our shows before. Please share our show today. I really want to start raising awareness and about empathy, on having patience and understanding as we send our babies off to school this year. They are up against so much, and we need not forget about some of the dope conversations we had with kids and teenagers in the past couple of episodes. So if you haven't seen those episodes before, go back on the page, take a look at those episodes, because we had some kids saying like, I'm going through a lot. Like, I'm experiencing so many things and I feel like nobody gets it. So as we're gearing up for the start of a new academic year, let's do this with all the grace and patience and empathy that we can muster, and talk about what are some of the traumas that kids can be going through. So sis, I got a question for you. What is something that you carried around with you as a kid that maybe nobody knew you were affected by going to school each day?
Man, so like for me, home life was good, you know, growing up with my siblings and my mom was great. So like home life, I didn't have anything to like carry with me in school, but like kids are mean. This may surprise a lot of people, but I was bullied. But the thing was,
Me too.
because I was a little skinny, dark skinned girl with glasses, okay? You know what I'm
I didn't
saying?
have the glasses, but I was definitely dark skinned and skinny.
I started
Absolutely.
wearing glasses in elementary school, so I was a skinny little black girl with glasses, okay? But the thing was, and I think I might have talked about this on one of the other shows, like my brother would always like crack jokes on me, and that's how like we play, so we would always crack jokes on each other and stuff like that. So for me, I had thicker skin already because I'm like, my brother be torturing me at home for no reason. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's, you know, shooting the dozens or whatever they call it. And so, like, it never really truly affected me. Of course, you know, it hurts sometimes. You like, dang, I'm gonna cut a little bit. But one thing that I chose to do, because I'm like, you gonna talk your stuff, you gonna do it, you know? But I'm not gonna let you do nothing or talk about nobody else. And so I became the protector of all the other kids around me who wasn't comfortable to stand up for themselves. And so I became their voice. And so like my position in school was like, no, you're not gonna talk about them. You know, like the kids that were different, the kids, you know, that were a little awkward, you know, even special needs kids and stuff like that.
Right.
I was like, you will not. You will not. And so I became that protector. Even still to this day, I still have that same energy. Like, you're not going to talk about nobody in front of me. You're not going to bully nobody. I can't have that. And so that was something that I carried that I think a lot of people to this day don't realize. But yeah, I was bullied in elementary school.
And I think that that's a story for a lot of folks. I too was bullied in elementary school and coming up. Same situation. Thin, knock knee, dark skinned girl. And you know, you get called a lot of things when you know, at that time, at least in the 80s and 90s growing up, it was all about the light skinned girl. So if you were a dark skinned girl, you didn't really get any attention. You were told you were ugly. There was still a whole lot of colorism in our community at that time. And so one of the things that I certainly carried to school with me was just feeling not worthy. I did not feel good enough for anything. I didn't feel good enough at home. I didn't feel good enough amongst my peers. So I had a lot of low self esteem. My self esteem was so low as a kid. And looking back on it as an adult, I'm just like, man, like I had really, really, really horrible self esteem. Like I did not like who I was. And so when I think about some of the things that I experienced as a kid and going to school, it makes me have a lot more patience even with my kids. Um, One of the things that I want to share with in this situation and this conversation that we're talking about, especially, is that so many kids are being bullied, and we have no idea to the magnitude of how it's happening. My bullying happened at school, but then once I got on the school bus and off the school bus, because sometimes it happened on the school bus, but once I got home, I had a break away from that bullying, right? So it was like I didn't have to deal with my bullies until tomorrow. So even though I had feelings of certain things at home, it was like, oh, well, I got a break from that at least until the next day. But you have to understand in this day and age, our kids don't get a break from their bullies because
Social media
social media and the
is
internet is in
vicious.
their pocket. It's following them everywhere. And it's so vicious out there. The things, the lengths that their tormentors are going through to belittle, to make them feel, you know, hurt, to inflict that harm, it's like so much easier for them to keep consistently bullying them like that. And so imagine a kid having to be up against that, you know, each and every day. It's so hard. So they may not always be able to express or articulate like what they're feeling. I know we talk a lot about emotional intelligence and how you know, we have to learn emotional intelligence even
Yeah,
as
that's a
adults.
learned
It's a learned
skill.
skill.
Mhm.
Everyone doesn't automatically have emotional intelligence, so they have to learn it. One of the things that I notice a lot of schools are doing is having that SEL implementation in their social work that they're doing within the schools. But I want everyone to be aware of the fact that it is a learned skill that takes time. There are still adults still mastering how to have emotional intelligence. So
And there are
let's
some that still have no idea.
They'll have no idea what it is, or that it's
Yeah.
necessary or it's needed. So when it comes to that, be patient. Some of these kids are acting out because they don't know how else to express that they're angry. Like, I know sometimes when I'm upset, I need to punch a pillow. I'm around here ready to flip over things. I'm angry. And I think we completely forget that kids are little humans. They are not.
But kids are like, when you think about it as an adult, like our emotions have, for the most part, leveled out. As kids, yo, and you don't know social emotional learning, or you're not emotionally literate. And then on top of that, you got energy for years. On top of that, you trying to rationalize life and you can't. Like, because you don't have those processing skills yet. Everything's heightened as a young person until you like darn near 20 years old. Like, everything is heightened.
20. That's being generous, because
Right. That's low key. I was really being generous with that. Like everything's heightened. And so with that, like, looking back, we have to give grace to our young people. And like, we want them to be, little adults. And we want them to have, to rationalize things. Even the way we think and talk to our children, like children, not even talking about like middle school, high school, talking about like babies, elementary school level. We're like, why would you do that? Did that make sense to you? At the time, it probably did, to be honest, because they don't have it. They don't have those skills.
At the time, it probably didn't. But there's a constant war at that age between the id and the ego, right? So it's like kids don't have the same type of impulse control that adults have. Like, that too is part of I'm choking social emotional learning.
But you're absolutely right. That impulse control is lacking. And then you put trauma on top of that. You have to look at the situation that we're in as a people right now. And we're looking at how these kids are the ones doing the carjackings and doing all this other stuff. It's the impulse control. It's the trauma. It's the lack of social emotional learning skills. It's all of these things packed on top of each other. And it's a volatile thing because kids, everything is right now, is not really thinking too much about the future. It's how I feel right now. Is I'm mad right now, or I'm sad right now, or I'm whatever right now, and everything else don't matter. And most of the things is the end of the world when you a teenager or a kid. Everything's the end of the world.
Everything. Something happens, and for kids, they can't see past that moment. It's going to last forever. Because forever is so small for them. It's the immediate future. Y'all bear with me. Talking a lot in the past couple of days, and I got a little winded there. But yes, to your point, kids are often not having the tools to deal with what's happening to them in that moment. We have to be more graceful, more patient as parents, and give them that guidance and kind of help them through it. And so
that part though, sis, like everything's a learning moment for kids. We don't want to, because of our own traumas and our own busyness and schedules or whatever, and this definitely feeds into the going back to school. We as parents and as guides, as teachers, as staff, as all the adults that we are in their lives, we don't want to take the time to teach them when everything's a teachable moment. Kids are going to do dumb stuff. It's life. You did dumb stuff. Like, we've all done dumb stuff, and it's not gonna stop. As long as there's life on this planet, kids are gonna do dumb stuff. In those moments, that's exactly when you stop and teach them. And if no one ever teaches them, prepare to have adults that do dumb stuff too. Because if it's not a teachable moment, if people just yelling at them and acting like they supposed to already know, those things are going to follow them into adulthood, and they're still not going to know. And so they're still going to be doing dumb stuff. Everything's a teachable moment, no matter how old you are. So even if you get college level kids, and I said what I said, college level kids that don't know certain things, you have to stop and take the time to teach them. But if we get our babies as babies, and instead of yelling at them or fussing all the time, and we say, you know what, I see you did this. Can you tell me why? Hear from them. Just hear them out for a second. Sometimes it makes sense, but not really. But still, it be a little
But they
logic
may
behind
not
it.
even have a why. There may not be a why.
And it may not be a why.
And
But
we need to be
I
okay
always,
with that.
I
It's not a
always
why.
try to get him to a point like Jaleel specifically where he's thinking. And
Mm-hmm.
then, because sometimes he'd be like, he'd think about it. And he'd be like, you know what? That didn't make good sense. Okay. All right. So what are we going to do next time? What are we going to do differently? Because, I don't think it's right to do this, or, it's not nice to do this, or whatever it is. Let them know what the actual problem was. Because I could tell you as a kid, it's been times where I did something and it was a problem, right? But I had no idea what the problem was. And I'm pretty sure everybody has a moment like that. Tell these kids what the issue is.
I also think that sometimes when kids react and do something, like for example, as adults, if we're frustrated, we lash out. Sometimes we don't realize that that's what we're doing. I saw a post some time ago that was still circulating, and I love this post. It was a mom, and she was talking about her daughter and how she was acting out, and she was getting very snippy with her. And she had, I think in the post, she was like 5, and she asked her, like, are you okay? Like, just are you okay? Because you're really snappy, and just the way you're talking to me, is there something wrong? And the baby says, sometimes my brain just tells me to be that way, and I don't know why. How many times have we woke up and felt something not sitting well in our spirit? And I can't explain it. There's sometimes I'll wake up and Robert will be like, are you okay? And I'll be like, no, I'm not today. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's bothering me. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know why I feel anxious or worried, but I do. And I can't place a feeling or reason for the feeling, but I just have it. Kids go through that too. We have to understand that they are just miniature human beings. And to your point earlier, you was hitting it right on the nail when you were saying we want them to be so mature, far beyond their time, and have this level of awareness and responsibility that most adults are still working on. We have to understand that kids are going to make mistakes. They're going to do or make decisions that aren't in their best interest. Or sometimes they make decisions that isn't necessarily in a bad interest, but goes against what we want them to do. And that's all part of the learning curve. They have to experience that stuff to grow, to flourish, to mature. Like, it is important. And if we're thinking about this in terms of them returning to school, sometimes they do stuff in the mornings where you're just like, now,
everything's heightened in the morning when you're trying to get out the door, though. Everything's heightened.
Against the clock. For those people that have never played or do play chess, you can play chess without the clock and you can play chess with the clock. So I used to grow up playing chess. I used to be on the chess team. When I say I was a full-on nerd, I was a full-on nerd. And I got on the chess team because my brother was on the chess team. And so I'm in like first and second grade playing chess. And I remember going to my first chess meet where there was the clock. Now, I felt like I was a pretty good chess player, right? When I didn't have that clock. But every time you had that clock on and you have to think ahead of the time to beat that clock and race against that clock, each move feels a lot more pressure, right? And it's the same thing when we getting our kids ready for school in the morning. Like, that used to be one of my most stressful times. And being honest, when the fall would come around, it was like triggering for me. It was like,
I got to do it again.
I mean, because you get summertime amnesia, right? For that time where they're off from school. Because even if you have them in summer camp, it'd be like, it's camp. I'm paying for them to be there. They get there when they get there. You don't have that same level of pressure. But, for me, I know, and just sharing a vulnerable story, about 4 years ago, my daughter went through the toughest time of her child life. We had multiple deaths happen in our family. She was being bullied really bad at school, and she was not okay. And she was very slow in the morning, and I would get frustrated because there's truancy, right? So if you are showing up late so many times, you will have somebody like, hey, you're always late to school. What's going on? Is everything okay at home? And as someone that's a mandated reporter who understands how that system could work, and as a Black person that has, DCFS kind of like always lurking behind the scenes and you're scared, like even if you're a good parent, it was like, please, let's get out of here because I don't want these folks looking at me, because if you're not showing up on time, they're blaming me as your mom, even though I done been up since 5:30. I done made sure you had your breakfast done. I done whole got up and dressed for work before I got you up so that I didn't have to worry about myself and I could just focus on y'all. So it's really no reason why. And we lived like literally around the corner from school. Like we was like a hop and a skip around the corner from the school. And I didn't know why she was like so like sloth like in the morning. She would get so distracted. I would tell her to do something, she would freeze, and I would get to fussing at her. Like, why are you doing this? We got to get on time, because that was my trigger. That was my stress. That was my trauma. That was my concern. And then when she finally expressed to me, like, I just don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school. I don't feel safe at school. I don't feel happy at school. Not only was she being bullied, school, my child wasn't a traditional student. So school for her didn't allow for her to be the student she is meant to be. It was like just a place of torture for her. For those 8 hours, because I would drop them off as soon as that I could so I can get to work. And when I started to ask her, like, why don't you want to go to school? Like, what's going on? And I found out what was happening to her at school. It changed my whole perspective of F that clock. It was like, we get there when we get there. I talked to the secretaries. We had a fantastic relationship, like the social worker. Everybody knew what was going on, because then I started leaving no stone unturned to make sure that this was not her environment at school. But just imagine how many realities that is for other kids. Like, they're going through so much at school. They may be a little slow today because they're not in a rush to be bullied, or they don't feel that the school environment is allowing them to be who they want to be, or it's a lot of pressure. How many parents put pressure on having good grades? Like, you don't want to fail, so it's like, I'm not a good student, so I got to stress about being a good student for the whole year. So there's a lot of things that can affect these babies when it's time for them to go to school, and we need to be mindful of that they're taking this stuff to school with them. And I think that that's something that I really want to bring awareness to, as we're heading into this new year where we're just having a lot more patience and empathy for our babies.
I think that's a thing. One, thank you for sharing, because that's a really important story that I think people need to hear, because as parents, there's jokes and there's memes and there's, Instagram videos of people like Black parents getting out the house. Come on, just grabbing the kids and tugging them under the arm. You know what I'm saying? Throwing shoes and, all types of stuff. Right. And that could be funny, it's humorous, but it's the reality though. Like, going anywhere that, there's a timetable to trying to get kids out the house is hard. But when you add in the factor that as adults and as parents, we can be very one-track minded. We can be very our needs, our thoughts, our plans, our goals, and not very inclusive to what our kids want to do or going through, or their goals or their plans. And so I would advise, like, us as adults, anyone who's watching this or going to watch this, to just, one, have a routine where we start our day with mindfulness and breath. And I'm going to say that's very important. One, because when you're rushing, everything's heightened. We talk about how as a kid, everything's heightened. When you're rushing, everything's heightened. So if you have, and you set, and I know getting up out of bed is hard for some people, that used to be me, okay? Baby, getting out of bed.
Are you not a morning person?
It be good to you. That baby good to me, girl. That baby good to me.
You be like, that time. And it do seem like when you sleep at night, the time go a whole lot faster than when you doing stuff during the day.
My bed is my bae. You hear me? Like, this is smooth thing. I'm sitting in my bed right now. Bed is boo thing. Bed is boo thing, and I love my bed. It's comfortable. It's like house. The girl, yes, my bed is babe.
And
Bed
there's
is
a
babe.
lot of kids that feel like that too, especially because
Bed
they've
is
had a real relaxed
babe.
last few weeks with summer, and not having to do that. So it hits different when they got to get back to it too.
So I understand, you know what I'm saying? But I think, like, for me, like, I'm a first timer. I'm a first
It's gonna
timer.
get real.
Start school on Monday. We went to visit the school today, and my mom went with us, and she's like, "He gotta be at school at 7:40. You gonna have to get up." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And not only do I have to get up because we choose to live a lifestyle a certain way, we're vegan. They ain't got no vegan options at CPS. You feel me? No.
Gotta make his lunch, honey.
So I'm mommying for real over here now. I'm making breakfast, lunch, and snack every day. Packing it and making sure it's still hot. Basically, having me eat it at lunchtime. Trying to on Amazon, trying to find little thermoses and all types of other stuff, so that he can eat what he's used to eating and have healthy food at lunch and still getting him to school on time at 7:40, and then moving my schedule around now where I could be able to pick him up at 2:40 when he gets out, and like adjusting to that life because he's been homeschooled since birth, and at a certain point right before COVID, he went to daycare for a couple months, and then COVID happened, and then we was right back to homeschooling. And so it's the whole new world. It's brand new.
It's so different.
But one thing I really am excited about is the routine and getting into the structure. And so parents, and guardians, whomever is watching this, I would really advise, and I'm telling you because this is something that I want to do as well, is wake up before the kids. Of course, you got to get them up, but wake up early enough where you can have some you time, where you can prep, where you can mentally get prepared, because they're gonna be slow. Where what I'm saying, where you can plan in a little extra time. It's still probably gonna be stressful. I'm not saying it's gonna release all stress. I'm just saying get mentally where you need to be, so it'll be a little bit easier. And so, and my son's not used to getting up and out the house at no time in the AM. Like no time in the AM. He wake up when he feel like it. You know what I'm saying? So he's not ready. And so to get him up, I know it's gonna be an adjustment, but I'm also like, I'm gonna get up and get my breathing in, check my to-do list, get stuff prepped, lay out his clothes, and really do certain things at night so it's easier in the morning. Like really planning it out. So yes, it's going to be stressful, but it doesn't have to be a negative triggering environment for you or for the kids. Like play some music.
The truth is, those things, it probably still will.
Yeah, just not as much.
It's so I want to validate the stress that parents are under when it comes to having to get your kids off. And I also want to validate it that some parents have privileges that other parents may not, that may still get in the way of that mindfulness, that preparation, and that real, genuine, good try to not be that good old college try. Because, that's another thing that I want in talking about this empathy when it comes to back to school is that there are parents that have to get their kids to school by walking them or by getting on CTA and making sure that they're getting on public transit to get them where they have to go. And if they're having to do that, you're not the only person that has to get on that bus. Your baby is getting on that bus and they trekking that trek with you also to get to school on time. So even though you may have the real interest in having a calmness, having a very easy breezy, prepped all night, transition to your day, it may still happen that you don't have that easy breezy, lemon squeezy day. And what I would rather challenge you all on is that you catch yourself. I've had times where I done fussed at these kids getting them out the door because I'm frustrated now. I done said things 15, 11 times. It's the same thing. We all know that it's sometimes those kids you will say it nicely, like, can you do this? And it's like it doesn't compute, it doesn't register. And then
Yes,
you be
God.
a little more offended. You be like, can you do this? And they still don't move. And then you be like, I said, and then they running
Y'all know
around
that
trying
it's
to get it
sometimes
done. So there are times that you'll try your best to speak to them a certain way and it still won't go that way because you are imperfect too.
yeah.
There was no, I don't know about y'all, but when I pushed both these humans out, nobody gave me an instruction manual, and
I
there
ain't
was
get
no chapters on how to cope with this part of life and get them to school on time. But I just want you to know that make sure that even if you caught yourself fussing and you had that slip in that day, that you don't let those babies into those doors without telling them you love them, without speaking into them that we got off to a rough start today, but the rest of your day is going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
Parents, apologize.
Yes, God.
If you was yelling, even if you felt like it was warranted because you did say it 15, 11 times and they didn't listen, apologize and say, I don't want to talk to you like that. And I don't want this to make up your day because they carry that with them the whole rest of the day. They are going to hear that because you become their conscience for that day. They're
That's real.
going to hear that for the whole rest of their day. So even if you slip up and you catch yourself not being your best self because you frustrated because you are a whole human, it is not easy getting these people up out this house, getting them into the car. It's been times where I done left whole lunches at the house. I done had to make 2 or 3 trips back to the school. You know, it's a lot of pressure on us as parents, but it's a lot of pressure on kids also. And so make sure you make that right before they go into the building. And you just make sure they don't ever enter those doors of that school without hearing, I love you and I want you to have a good day. And believe it or not, kids are a whole lot more forgiving and resilient than we give them credit for. But it's the when you don't say those things that other stuff just kind of sticks with them because it becomes the message. Nothing else becomes the message if they don't hear it. So you want to try and resolve that and try and fix that. I'm gonna share before we move on that this is a good point to bring up a very important hashtag. So I'm asking that each and every person create a post with the hashtag, what was in my backpack? Because each day, I want you all to realize that there's a whole lot of things your kids or kids are bringing into school with them in the daytime, more than pencils, notebooks, crayons, and school supplies, and those paper towels and all of that other stuff on this on the list that the supplies list that you be like, now why do you need this? More than all of that stuff that they taking into the school, they're taking trauma with them. They're taking insecurities with them. They're taking disparities with them. They're taking chances getting to school on time. They're taking chances going into the building. As we experience the different types of violence that's happening in schools, understand that kids are experiencing those things also. They are aware of what could happen. So they're taking the anxiety of going into those doors and feeling safe. And so I want each person to think about what you was carrying in your backpack when you were going to school each day that was more than your school supplies. Nat talked about bullying. She was carrying bullying with her in her backpack. I carry bullying and low self-esteem in my backpack. And kids are carrying a whole lot more with them also. Some of the things that I come across is in the work I do, we're talking about kids that's being sexually abused, that's being abused, kids that don't have enough to eat at home, um, kids that's dealing with, you know, not having the best relationship with their siblings, grief. There's a whole lot of grief going around. There's a lot of kids carrying grief with them. So always keep in mind about what was in your backpack. So I'm going to share that hashtag across the screen right now. So please share what was in your backpack each and every day that you were going to school because we want to know about it. We want to know about some of the things that you were dealing with and think about what that was like for you as a kid when you are fussing at your children or they're going through the rat race of getting to school every day. What might they be carrying with them in their backpack? So now that we done watched the hashtags, sis, can you, I asked you about some of the things that you experienced growing up that you were carrying to school with you. But you also do a whole lot of work in the community because if y'all don't know, my sister's dope. She is doing so much for folks out there in her communities, being the change that she wants to see in the world. And so, with you being out there and working in the community, working with students, what are just some of the examples of the things that you come across the kids carrying with them in their backpacks?
Man, I've been working with youth since I was a youth. So literally, I started when I was 15, working with other youth, and I never stopped. So I've been doing it ever since. And the things from then to now are very different. And I'll use an example of when I was teaching. This was maybe 20, maybe 2010, maybe 2010. And I was co-instructing with this program that I was doing at the time. And this young man, he loved being at the program, right? He was a hood young guy, nothing wrong with that. But hood young guy, him and his sister was in the program together. He was always there on time. Like, he loved being in the program. And one day his sister was there, but he wasn't. And then he came in later in the day. And we happened to, pull him to the side, like, what's going on? It was the first time he had ever been late. His sister was there. He wasn't there. We was like, what's up? So we talked to him, and he opened up and he let us know that, he really wanted to be there on time. He really wanted to be at the program, but his dad told him he couldn't go. Mm-hmm. Right. And he dropped his little sister off. His dad dropped his little sister off and told him he couldn't go in. He was going to take him to learn the ropes of drug dealing. And that hit. I'll never forget that. Like, I'll never forget that, because he just wanted to be in the program. He just wanted to learn. He wanted, but his dad, like, nah, you finna get out here and learn this street life. Right. Yeah. I'll never forget that, because he has to carry that in his backpack.
Yeah.
He has to dive head first into a world that he doesn't want to be in. He's trying to find escapes. He's trying to be in these programs. He's trying to learn something different, but his father is like, no, you finna be about this life. So he has to carry that around with him. And I hope that, eventually in his life, as he got older, he got a chance to truly break away from that and pursue all the things he wanted to pursue. I really hope he did. And I ran into him years later. I ran into him. And so he's older, of course, and I'm like, oh my God, I remembered his face. And I walked up to him and he remembered me. And he's like, Miss Natalie. And I'm like, hey, baby. And so I'm like, how are you? How are you? And he was like, and he just was saying how he never forgot the program. He never forgot the experience. And, he didn't let me know if he was still, if he was in that life or not. But he was just like, he never forgot the program. And it was so awesome. And, he talked about both our mentor that I was co-instructing with. And he's like, how is she? And he was so happy. So I just truly hope that he got a chance to break away from the family that was trying to pull him into another direction. And so there's a lot of young people, more than we know, that are dealing with their family pulling them down. They're trying actively to go in the other direction, but their family is pulling them back. And then you have situations where, like you mentioned earlier, there's sexual abuse and trauma that's at play.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna get into that, because that's something that I feel very passionate about, and as someone that has been providing Aaron's Law presentations for students for the past 2 years, you get a lot of disclosures. You get a lot of children. I had a child once disclose that she was so afraid. What made her finally disclose was that she was so afraid that her abuser was going to abuse her sister. and that it was going to um, continue. And so one of the things that we share with students when we're doing Aaron's Law programming is they learn about what Aaron's Law is and why it got started. And Erin Marin, who is the person that created Aaron's Law, that is exactly what happened to her. She kept her abuse silent for years, and then her abuser started to abuse her sister. And when she realized her sister was being abused, that's when they broke their silence and talk to their parents. And one of the things in that video is Erin is talking about how she wrote down all the times in the abuse and was hoping somebody would sneak into her diary and read her diary and see what was happening to her, because at least she didn't have to go through sharing that with someone. Can you imagine what or how many children are experiencing that, especially in the Black community, where 1 in 5 Black women are survivors of some form of sexual assault or sexual violence? And so that means that there are a whole lot of these babies that are in that 1 in 5, and they're carrying this secret with them in their backpacks each and every day. So they may not be able to learn today. They may not be able to focus today. Yeah, maybe when you say something to them, they're snapping out. And the behavior isn't the way we will want to. But when you learn about trauma and you really understand how trauma manifests in folks and how it manifests in children, you kind of look at those instances with a different perspective and a different eye. And even though sometimes it gets hard because the behavior can get hard to deal with, because you are a human being too, I just really want us to keep in mind as we're going into this new year that adults aren't the only people going through stuff. When you're experiencing things and you have children, your children are experiencing those things right along with you. We think we're doing a good job of keeping stuff from them. We're not doing as good a job as we think we are, and shielding them from the adult traumas that we're going through. And it becomes their traumas. When they see your head low and they see your spirit is dark, they're taking on that energy too. You're not being able to be there for them in the way that they need you to be there. And that's going to school with them too, because, it's like when, a kid finds out maybe their parents are splitting up, and the first thing they think is it my fault? Is it something that I did to make you all, want to go your separate ways? Imagine that kids feel that way if you're going through a tough time too. If you're going through something as an adult, they're trying to assess in what way they fit into that tough time. Like, am I causing this? Am I to blame? And they're carrying all of that with them alongside.
And sometimes it's not that subtle. Sometimes it's things as bold as domestic violence, where they seeing you get beat or cussed out or whatever it is. And the things that this current session actually of program this past school year, when we were working with the young people, one thing that was very hard for me is how detached they are. And it was hard for me because they're so young and they're just not there emotionally. And they're not there emotionally, their words, because they're tired of being hurt. And their words. And like 12, 13 years old, 14 years old. These are middle schoolers. They ain't even made it to high school yet. And they tired of being hurt to the point that they're not there emotionally. Yeah. And my class was a social emotional class. I'm like, come on, y'all, we're gonna talk about how we feel, we're gonna let it out, y'all can tell me whatever. And yet they definitely opened up to me, and opened up and shared. But I think I may have shared this on here before, but we were going over was it Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls? Yeah, Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls. We went over Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls. Just the first verse. About the mother praying for the son can't get right, son end up dying, getting killed, right? Because of his choices. And it was crazy because it was the young ladies. It was the girls. And when you think about that, that's even worse, because it's like, you supposed to be the nurturers. You supposed to be the one raising these babies and pouring love into these babies, and you ain't got it to give. At 14, like 13, 14 years old. That's why it hit me so heavy, because it wasn't just this one young lady or a couple young ladies, because it was more than one. it wasn't just this setting. It was like the greater implications of what this means for us as a society if this is where our children are, to the point at
They're
to
being exposed to a whole lot more, a lot faster and sooner than some of the previous generations. Not to say that we weren't exposed to stuff, but literally our level of exposure was a lot less significant than what our youth are experiencing now. They're seeing so much more that they can't turn away from it. It goes back to the whole internet. So, even if we're trying to shield certain things, them from certain things, they still have access to stuff that we wouldn't want them to have access to. So they're really becoming very desensitized a whole lot sooner, where we've kind of gone through trial and error and we just tired because it's like, okay, I done tried to do this and that. They're going through that trial and error a lot sooner than what we may have went through as kids to adults. So I totally see it being they don't have the spirit or the energy in them to nurture anybody. And then let's not forget, sis, a lot of them are doing that nurturing and their siblings. There's a lot of older kids that are the parent. They are,
I've had that conversation too.
oh man, and it breaks my heart when I hear people now be like, "Well, I had to do it when I was a kid," but that's not right, and that's a generational trauma in itself because they don't get to be kids on their own, and so they get to have this detachment from the possibility of being mothers themselves. It starts to make it unappealing to them, and they just can't wait to just not have to worry about somebody else and put themselves on the back burner. And that gets started, so that seed gets planted very early on because they're caring for your children. There's still a lot of moms that's living their best life and they like, hey, you gonna go and help me with these kids. So they're
And then
carrying
it's
that.
like, who's caring for them?
Who's
And so
caring
a
for
lot of the
them?
times sometimes it's resentment that happens with the younger siblings. Other times it's like, okay, I'm the mother then, and it's the love and the pour into the younger siblings, and then nothing goes back into self.
Right.
It's the sister Elavicia, and she tells her story, and it's so powerful. And you met Elle at the
Yes.
Mental Health event, and Elle was amazing. Shout out to Elle if you watching
Yes.
this.
Shout
Elle
out
was
if she's
amazing.
watching.
Elle was amazing. She's the editor of the Chicago Activism magazine, which I'm on the most recent cover of.
We saw that, boo. We saw that. Yes, sis. Do all the
I
greatness.
finally got the physical copy, like finally. But yeah, and she tells her story, and it's such a powerful story, and that was her reality, where she was the mother to multiple younger siblings, and she was pouring so much into them, and was missing herself, and she had no one to fill her cup. She had no one to pour into her. And it's so many young people that go through that, and they're going through that not knowing, like they don't have the life experience, they don't have the lessons being taught to them. Like I said, everything a learning lesson. They don't have that to give, and so they're pouring from an empty cup. They're pouring from a space of not knowing, doing the best they can. And then what is that leaving to the generation that they're rearing and that they're raising, basically? And so it's just a lot of things that these young people have to go through that we have to heal as a society.
Yep.
But as teachers going into the school year, as instructors, me being one going in, it's frustrating because you're like, would you just be quiet? Would you just sit down? Would you just stop talking back? Would you
And
just do what I said?
talk about that.
You
Let's not.
know?
Yes, and I'm so glad that you have the perspective from both sides as being the parent. And I get it. Like there's times where I've been trying to get through my presentation, and because we're talking about sensitive stuff, you'll have a kid here and there that wants to make a joke out of something you said, and they get extra silly, and they're having a comment that don't have anything to do with the presentation, and you got to reel them in. And when you're there to do a job and you're responsible to make sure that other kids are getting what they need in that educational environment too, it's a lot of pressure on the staff. It's a lot of pressure on the educator also. So I want to touch on that, and I want to talk a little bit about that before we end our show. We've been trying to keep it at 1 hour so that you all not, getting sleepy, because it is hump day. There is school tomorrow. There's work tomorrow. People still got to be grown ups and do stuff. So we try not to keep y'all here to 10 o'clock anymore. But I feel like this component is really important. As an educator, um, what is that like for you, and what ways do you feel like you can have more empathy for those times when you like just sit down and be quiet and listen?
So in those moments where I get, a little frustrated, because it happened, Lord, it happened, I remind myself of why I'm there. And in those moments, I have those real conversations with them, like, transparency and all of that. I do that with them because I want them to see the human in me. I care. You know what I'm saying? Like, I care. And honestly, I keep it a buck with them. I'm like, I about spend more money being here than I get paid being here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm literally here off love. You know what I'm saying?
That's a job from the heart.
It's from the heart. It's literally from the heart.
Yeah.
And so with that, I'm like, I care about y'all. And from like day one, I'm just walking in like, I love y'all. I care about y'all. I don't care how you feel about it. I care about you. You know what I'm saying? And I tell them that because they need to know somebody does. And in that moment, I tell them, we stop what we're doing, lesson plan, scratch for whatever time period we need to talk. But I'm like, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? Like, to the point where I'm here because I care about you, and you won't allow me to care about you. You won't allow me to pour into you. What's going on? And then we have those conversations. And I tell them how I feel in those moments. And I think, and I've seen a shift based on that, because they understand. They understand. Some, still don't care. They do whatever they want to do, but others really, really get it. And I think teachers don't want to be vulnerable because it's seen as a weakness or whatever like that. But these young people, I feel like they're not seeing humanity, and that's the problem. So I'm going to show you my humanity. I am a little frustrated. I'm not going to cuss you out, and they're so used to being cussed out.
I'm so glad you say that, because you also don't want to reinforce some of the trauma that they're probably escaping from.
Exactly. So I don't yell. I'm not about to scream my head off in class. That's not who I am. And you're not going to bring that out of me. And so at one point, the kids was acting up. And so I had told them to be quiet already. So I sit back. I just sat back and I just watched them. And I let them, have their conversations, as long as they wasn't doing nothing crazy. I watched them. I don't know how long. It might have been like 30 minutes. I just sat there. And then, as they start noticing that I wasn't talking, or I was just sitting there chilling, some kids, Miss Don, just yell at them, cuss them out, tell them sit down, blah, blah, blah. I say, no, I'm good. And I watch. And then some other ones, the main ones that was talking, I'm bored. What are we going to do? Now you want me to teach. now you want me to be engaged.
You bored because you won't let me make you unbored.
Right. Because I'm trying to help with that, but you won't let me. And so it's like, I'm not going to let you pull that out of me. And why is that the first thing that other kids like? Just cuss them out. We're teaching that to them, and we trying to figure out why they cussing each other out, because that's what the teachers are doing. That's what the adults in their life is doing. And it was I had a young man this last class I had, and he was super cool, right? Super cool guy. I was like, I like this little boy, super cool. It was one day he was the only kid that came, because it was an after school program, so it was optional, right? So one day he was the only kid that came. And he was like, Miss Natalie, if we do your assignment, can I have a certain amount of time to do whatever I want to do? And I was like, well, what do you want to do? And he wanted to build some stuff out of like a sculpture out of aluminum foil or something. So I'm like, I bet, So we got our acting thing out the way. He wrote a little script, and, we did what we were going to do. We didn't have the aluminum foil for him to build the sculpture. And so he was like, he wanted to go to the cooking class down the hall. He had talked to the teacher once before, and she said it was cool. So I'm like, I bet. So we walked down the hall. It's just me and him, and a random man in the hallway. He works at the school, didn't know what he did. I just, knew he worked there. Started talking to him. And so they were bantering back and forth. I don't know their relationship. So they bantering, the boy laughing and whatever. So we keep walking and talking down the hall. And so then as we started to get a little further, the man got aggressive in his voice. And that's when I turned around. And he goes, y'all not supposed to be walking this way, like real aggressive, like. So I turned around like, hold on.
Not necessary.
And that's when I got to step in, because, you know, the little banter, I don't know, like I said, I don't know that relationship, you know what I'm saying? But then when you got aggressive, now it's my turn. I said, no, this is my student. We're walking over here. He's okay. I let him know. And I look young, and they mistake me for a kid a lot. But then he gets up and proceeds.
You look a little young. To be aggressive. Black don't crack.
You know what I'm saying? Not if you don't smoke it. You feel me? And so he gets up, and he's getting aggressive, and he's you know, all of this. And I've already established myself and told you who I was. And so he's like, so y'all, where y'all going? I'm like, we're going to the cooking class, you know, So he gets up and he walks us to the cooking class. So now he's in front of us, and he opens the door, and he's talking to the cooking teacher, and he's like yelling to her across the classroom, and she's cooking. And so she's focused. So she's not paying him any attention. So then he gets to talking. So I start talking to the teacher. So I'm like, hey, you know, I just wanted to check and see. He said, you know, but she couldn't hear me because he's yelling. So, because now he's yelling over me to her. So I had to turn around again. I say, excuse me. I am the teacher. Like, I'm telling this man, I am the teacher. I doubt a kid to be standing in front of another teacher saying, I am the teacher, as calmly as I'm talking to you. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I'm in your face now. You see me. I am the teacher. This is my student. Back down. You know what I'm saying? So eventually he walks out. Was really no resolve, but eventually he walks out, and I calmly have the conversation with the other teacher. Like, yeah, was it cool for him to come? You know, whatever, it's cool if it's not. We were just checking. You know what I'm saying? And she was like, no, we actually cooking today, so not today. So I'm like, I bet. So we get turned around, and I walk out. My student was standing in the hallway. So I'm like, who is this man? He's a janitor. No shade to janitors. I ain't got no shade to janitors. It's an awesome profession. They make some good money too. But
they didn't have the authority.
You don't have the authority to be talking to me or my student in any matter, let alone the manner you was talking to us. It's that energy that people feel like they can talk to kids any kind of way. Because even if you thought I was a kid, why are you talking to me like this?
And it's because of that energy that kids respond and retaliate.
They reciprocate that energy.
Because that is something I'm very passionate about when it comes to adultism. That's called adultism. It's about oppressing kids and making children feel like, because they are children, kind of that see but not heard kind of mentality, and that they don't, you know, they're not people that you have to have respect for also, or that they can be talked to in any sort of way, and that you can.
What was the teacher from the Matilda, Miss Grumble or something like that was?
Miss Trenchmo.
Miss Trenchmo. Yeah, it was that energy. I'm big, you're small. Like, you know.
But imagine how much those kids are experiencing that. So if they're experiencing that at home, if they're experiencing that if they go to the store, because there have been times, you know, there are some kids that cause ruckus, and we're not saying that all kids are good kids and that no kids have misbehaviors, etc., right? Because there are some kids out there that do misbehave and do things that they shouldn't do. And so we're not telling you there's people, but we also recognize and validate that there are children at times that are doing things that teachers, educators, staff members, etc., have to deal with. And they're up against and they have to contend with. And it's hard for them, to your point, to do the things that they need to do or make sure everyone in the classroom is getting the education they deserve. So we're not invalidating that and saying that that doesn't happen. But a lot of times it's happening to kids that ain't necessarily did anything, or maybe they had a tough day that day, so maybe they just happen to act out, but they don't normally do that. But you're already frustrated, you know, from whatever else things have happened that day. So if the kid is experiencing that at home, because that was an issue for me as a kid. I felt like I was unheard at home about a lot of things, and it really
And
played.
most kids do. That's actually
Most
why
kids
I
feel
started the
that
work
way.
that I do, is because being around young people and understanding that they don't feel like they have a voice. So let me help you establish your voice.
They don't feel like they have a voice because they're not allowed to have one. Kids
Mm-hmm.
aren't usually allowed to have a voice. So if you start telling them that young, you don't understand the seed that is planted within them. So then they start to have less self-esteem, worth, or value. And then if they don't have any value for themselves, they definitely can't have value for other people. And it's just this ripple
That part.
effect that happens, and then we ask ourselves, like, why these kids acting this way? They downtown tearing up stuff and and terrorizing people. Well, a lot of them don't have a lot of self-worth because they've been told they shouldn't. They've been taught to feel that they shouldn't. They've been made to feel that they shouldn't. And while there are all of these other influences, sure, the greatest influence is the ones closest to them, their home environments, their neighborhoods, their school environments, etc. So we want to make sure that as we're going into this new year, that we're having a more empathetic way of approaching these situations and understanding that these kids are taking a lot with them each and every day. It is not just their school supplies that's coming with them to school. They're
Yeah.
bringing trauma. They're bringing that lack of self value, self worth. Some of them are in violent, written neighborhoods where they're seeing the violence all the time. They're afraid to walk in their own neighborhoods because there's stuff going on in their own neighborhoods. They're having access to stuff that they don't see in their neighborhoods, but see in the rest of the world on the internet. You got fools coming in and terrorizing schools. You have all of these things that kids are taking with them each and every day. So
Mm-hmm.
as we enter
That they
into
don't know how to process.
that they can't process because they don't have the tools. So
Right.
not only do they not know how, their brains aren't even formed
Equipped.
enough
Yeah.
to take in those tools. Like we have whole adults that don't have the tool. So just think about that going into the school year as parents, as educators. Please remember what it was like for you. I think that we get that child amnesia the older we get, where we almost get out of touch with who we were when we were that age. That's something I do a lot with my kids. I try and think about, man, when I was little and I did this, how did I feel? And I don't always get it right. It's times and stuff happen with being a parent where I be stressed all the way out. It's been a time or two I've had to go whole out the house, a process, go for a drive, collect myself, figure it out. But when I'm doing that, I'm processing it from, man, what did I feel like when I tried to talk to my mom about this? Or
Yeah.
I couldn't talk to my mom about this? Or when someone said this to me and they didn't know how it affected me and how it hurt me, I'm an adult. And when people say certain stuff to me, I'm quick to be like, hold on there. Professionalism go all out the window. I'm like that person is gonna be like, wait, hey, hold on a minute now.
Whoa,
Who
whoa
are
now.
you talking to? Like, what? I don't care how much you pay me. It ain't enough for my integrity and self value. Like,
Come
we gonna
on.
have to understand you can't afford that. So you gonna have to
That's
pipe
it.
down a little bit. You have to come back to baseline. But kids are going through that, and at least as adults, we feel empowered to stand up for ourselves. Kids don't often have that empowerment. They don't often be able
And
to.
one thing that I would like to encourage adults, teachers, parents, whomever to do as we get ready to wrap out is that, like, just that, be that encouragement for them to speak up and utilize in their voice. Like,
Mhm.
even at times, like Jaleel can be loud, honey. Y'all, he done snuck on here a couple times. You know what I'm saying? Like, he
Yeah,
can
that's my
talk, baby.
buddy. He be
He
like, "Look
can
at
talk.
my toy."
Baby, he can talk, okay? And I encourage him to speak up, even if it's to me. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I tell mommy everything, even if I'm the problem. You know what I'm saying? But also teaching him accountability and
Mm.
using his voice and to
Yes.
speak clearly. If there's a problem, don't whine about it. Speak up and say what that problem is so it can change. Like, use your voice. But if he also a COVID baby, so he only used to being around us and speaking up around us. So it take him a second to be around people. So we went to the school today, and like he was talking into my purse, introducing himself, and I'm like, "Sir, they over there. What? My purse don't need to know who you are. You know what I'm saying?" So, but with that, encouraging them and letting them know their voice is powerful.
Yeah.
Letting them know that what they have to say matters. In the household, in the schools, I tell my students that, I tell my son that, I tell my nieces and nephews that, even the growns. You know what I'm saying? Like, your voice matters. What you have to say matters. Your thoughts matter. Your feelings matter. Own them. Say them loud, say them proud. Be as bold as you need to be, but know how to pull it back when you need to. But don't be silenced, and don't be afraid to say what you need to say, as long as you're saying it in kindness or articulately. And sometimes you can't do that, and you got to
So
go the
I was
other
gonna say,
route.
sometimes you can't do it articulately.
And sometimes you can't do that. Just do what you need to
Look,
do, but
it's been
don't
a
do
time or
it
two my
fast.
octaves have raised, and it wasn't in disrespect. It was because I was excited or
Yeah.
I was emotional, and we
It's
got
the
to give
passion
grace.
in what you were saying.
Yes, yes.
And as long as you're saying what you need to say, and even with Jaleel, like sometimes people raise his voice, and I just look at him, and I said, "Did you want to say that another way?" And then he'll be like, "Yeah," and he'll be like, "Let me try again." Sometimes he just say that. He be like, "I'm gonna try again," and I'll be like, "Okay, go right ahead." You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
because I get it, but you're
It's
not gonna yell at me
important.
either.
It's important. And I've gotten to the point where there was one time I was very proud of myself. There are times as an adult I leave and I be like, I did that. I know ain't nobody else see it, but I did that. I was talking to my daughter, right, and she was just very upset. She was very upset. I had said something that made her upset, and it was like I didn't even realize that I was doing it until I realized that I was doing it. Where I was just letting her yell. I was just letting her yell and get it out, and I didn't take offense to it that she was yelling at me. She was yelling because she was upset.
She was upset. Yeah.
She was upset. What happened made her feel a bunch of emotions. And how does that, her adrenaline is rushing at that point? That baby had no control. She had zero control. And then I was just like, okay, well, let's calm down. Let's take some deep breaths and let's talk about this, because not everything is about I'm trying to disrespect you, I'm trying to check you. And that's the thing that we have to have grace with our babies too, is they're gonna be emotional, they're gonna be passionate, they got feelings. How many times have you yelled and been like, I'm sorry I yelled? Like, I have to, with this husband, I have to be like, I realized I was yelling at you. That was
And
not
I'm
okay.
sorry. But the grace in that is being able to say, I'm sorry. Being able to realize that and calm yourself down. And we have to show that to the kids so that they know that they can do that too. And that it's okay to say sorry, and that it's okay to check yourself. I congratulate Jaleel when he does self-correction. Like, if I told him something in the past, sometimes he'll catch himself and be like, oh, and then he'll change his statement. And I'll be like, nice self-correction. You know what I'm saying?
You gotta encourage that. It's something you brought up that I don't want to just scave over, because it's one thing that I'm constantly putting in my children or breathing into them. And it's that whole advocating for yourself.
Yes.
Both my children have anxiety. And so my little guy, who, when he's having anxiety because he doesn't want to be a burden, because he wants to be a big man and figure it out on his own, a lot of times he'll sit there and suffer in silence. So one day he was having a really tough time at school, and he got really, really, really upset. His anxiety got the best of him, and he was banging on his desk. And I had to go in there like, are you okay? He was like, I'm upset, and I don't want to have to ask, and this and that. I was like, okay, calm down and let's talk about it. Like, why don't you want to ask? Let's go over it. And so once he explained to me what his reasons are, I had to remind him. I said, you are the best advocate, because he wanted me to go handle it. I said, I know you're going to handle it. You're going to take care of it. You're going to calm down and you're going to express yourself. Because even as your mom, I'm a lioness when it comes to my cubs. I don't play nothing about these babies, whether the ones from my womb and the ones that were not. If you're mine, you're mine. And I'm not going to play when it comes to you. But even as your mom, there's a certain level of advocacy that I can't do justice like you can. So you need to be able to speak up for yourself. You're going to be a grown up someday. You're going to be a good, a successful man. But learning how to speak up for yourself is going to be part of you obtaining that success. And so you need to start here. So we're going to strategize on how you can fix this yourself, and then you're going to take care of it. And so he calmed down and we talked about it, and he went and handled it. And then I get a message from his advocate at school, and they're like, yeah, Kyron reached out, and he explained this, and we got it all fixed and everything is okay. And I was like, oh, that's great. I said he was very upset, and I expressed to them what happened. But then a few weeks later, a very similar situation happened, and I didn't know it happened until it was already resolved. He came in, was like,
that self-correction kicked in.
and not just that, he saw how he learned how to believe in his own ability to advocate for himself. He learns how to believe in himself, that he can accomplish speaking up for himself. He doesn't need mama to do it. And that's important. And things will change. That you have a voice to be able to speak up for yourself. And so when we strip our babies of that, what we end up doing is creating a whole lot of people pleasers. We create people that don't have trust in their own decision-making abilities. They can't hurt people. They go out in the world and they don't know how to navigate any of this. And so we want to make sure that, also bringing it back to, the back to school empathy, is that even though, it's instinctual to be the parent and jump in on some of these instances, we also need to teach our kids that SEL too. We need to be talking to them and fortifying them on how to be their own advocates and speak up. And that self-correction you was just talking about, sis, because it's so much important in that they're going to need that as adults. They're going to need that to navigate for the rest of their lives, or people going to walk over them. And although you, mama, and you know a whole lot, can't nobody say about their situation like that person. And you want to teach that to them early. They ask for what you need. Draw those boundaries, because those boundaries, boys, we're gonna have to have a whole show about, we're gonna talk about boundaries, because I feel like that's a really long generational curse in a lot of ways. And so as we're sending our babies out to school, let's not forget that too, teaching them how to advocate. I tell Kyron that, tell your teachers you need a minute. When your anxiety is high and you can't focus, send a message. I'm stressed, I need a break. I need a break. When they were in person, they had color codes. I talked to their teachers and I said, if they're having a rough morning, I will put a red sticky note inside their folders that they were turning in. So their teachers would be able to open it and say, oh, well, Naraya may be a little, distracted today because she started out having a rough day. If she was having a kind of iffy day, it was a yellow sticky note. If it was a good day, we got out on time, she seemed in good spirits, it was a green sticky note. And I just remember one of the teachers coming to me and being like, that was one of the best things, and I wish more parents would do that. If we could have a system where we can kind of understand that maybe this child was up against something this morning, so I could have a little bit more attention to that. Those are things that we also could advocate for our kids if they are experiencing behavioral problems. Sometimes there's a reason, and we have to communicate. We have to make sure that we're fighting for them, but we're teaching them how to fight for themselves.
And also letting them know that it's okay to communicate, because a lot of these kids are feeling these feelings, but they feel like they can't talk to their parents about it, so their parents can't advocate for them. Like with your story with Naraya, when she finally came to you to let you know what was going on, you were like, I bet now you can do something about it. You know what needs to be addressed. You know you need to go talk to these counselors. You need to be at school. You need to fix some stuff out. But if she never told you that, you would have never known what to do. You wouldn't have done anything because you didn't know it was anything to do.
I knew it was something off with her. I just wasn't exactly sure to the depth of what it was and how stressful and what type of things she was experiencing at school. It was a lot for her, and it was a lot for me as her mom to hear some of the things that was happening to her with bullying at school. And I noticed some things in her behavior had changed because she used to be just like a very bubbly kid, happy kid, and she started to get very withdrawn, very quiet. I would pick her up from school, she would be sad all the time. And so I knew something was off, but when I would ask her what's going on, she would just say nothing. I think
That's why that communication on their end is so important.
it is, but I'm going to share this because it's very impactful for the conversation, and I really want people to understand that. What happened was in that moment, one day I picked her up, and she was probably the saddest I've ever seen her, and I just asked her, like, "You're not okay. What is it?" And she's like, "Can I be honest?" And I said, "I want you to be completely 100% honest." And she said, "I want to die."
Mm.
And I said, "Wait, what?" She said, "Yeah, I just want to not hurt, and I just don't feel like I deserve to live anymore." And
Mm.
that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever heard um, from either of my children. She was 11. So when we're talking about the things that kids are up against at school,
Really?
the suicide rate amongst children has skyrocketed. You have to understand the importance of understanding what is in their backpack. And it's not always just the things that you think being a typical kid. They're up against so much, so many emotions that they can't process. And
Yeah.
I'm grateful as she is approaching her 16th birthday. My child could not be here if she had not opened up. And so I'm encouraging each and every person to understand the importance of having that empathy and understanding that kids are up against so much. And for them, they just want it to go away. And the only thing that they can see is that permanence of a resolve is suicide, and that's why it's happening. And it was one of the scariest times of my life. I was so terrified and trying to get her the help and support she needed, but I sprung right into action. As someone that also was that way as a kid, at her age, it was like, I know it's serious. As someone that has lost folks from suicide, I knew it was serious. And it wasn't something that I was willing to gamble with when it came to her. And I had to spring into action. And whoever wasn't a support and wasn't going to be in the village didn't have access until we got her to a space where she was, herself, or she was coping in a way where that wasn't an option. And so that is why I really wanted to have this conversation today, because it is happening a lot to our kids. They are up against so much and they don't always talk about it. So when they're acting out and you're seeing those behaviors, don't automatically assume this kid is a throwaway, that they're bad, that it's something wrong with them that can't be resolved. Sometimes it's a cry for help. And just take that minute to just ask them if they need anything. Sometimes they may open up and sometimes they won't, but just
And
still
if you
trying
pay attention, you can tell. Like I can look at certain students like first day and pinpoint what issues are based on what they're doing, what they're saying, and how they're behaving. I'm like, okay, this is a self-esteem issue. Okay, this is a this. And it may not, I don't know, it may not be 100% accurate, but as they open up, it tends to be right. And you can tell, like you said it earlier, like when you really start working with young people and having a mindset of, okay, if they're acting out, it may be something else. You start to notice the patterns.
yeah.
And so let's be open-minded and really start looking for resolves and notice the patterns on what could be wrong so we can actually help that young person so they can get to a point where they can learn or not, draw attention or act out in class, where they can be placed on the right path.
They can have the support.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, that's what it is. They're looking for support and they're not getting it. And so, a lot of what they're doing is a trauma response. If you have not had the opportunity to, there are lots of free training modules out there or trainings that you can attend where you learn about trauma, being trauma informed. If you are really wanting to understand your child or children, I think it's very important to understanding people and just navigating the world, because we're all having some sort of trauma we're carrying with us each and every day. learn more about how trauma works and what it does. And sometimes you'll realize too, like I came to a conclusion that there were a lot of things I was doing as a trauma response. And it was like once I made that connection, I was able to, resolve that issue and do better. Because I realized like, hey, this is a pain that I didn't realize that these two are connected. And so if you start really doing your healing journey, you're going to learn that so much of who you are and what you do is a trauma response.
Mm-hmm.
And so have that grace for these babies as we head into this year. I'm encouraging you as a parent, as an educator, as a professional, and just as a person navigating the world, because we're all broken in some way, to learn more about trauma response, and it will truly open up your vision. I just move so differently when it comes to folks.
I think every teacher should be mandated to.
Every teacher, every person working in public service, every person dealing with people should have some form of trauma-informed training.
Yeah.
Because once you get it, it just opens up your whole world. And, I will say to your point before we close out, one of your favorite books, which is the 4 Agreements. And when the agreement is talking about not taking things personal, that some stuff has nothing to do with you. When you are trauma informed, you just move different. You have a calmness, right? And it's like when someone's doing something, you be like, that ain't even about me. You can start reading into certain behaviors where you're like, oh, so this doesn't have anything to do with me. And I better not even, that's not my bag, as you like to say. I better
not my bag.
It's not my bag.
It ain't mine. I ain't picking it up.
I'm not picking it up. So it's like very important that we get some of that trauma-informed training and understanding, because it really does help you to navigate differently. So it has meant the difference. Like, I'm a better parent because I have that insight, because I have that educational background, because I have that training. And it's made such a difference and impact even with the relationships I have with my children. They're not perfect, but we have fantastic relationships. So I'm encouraging, as we close out this conversation today, to look more and read some books on trauma informing and being trauma informed, being trauma trained, where you can look at certain things. I'm actually reading a really good audio booking, a really good book. Shout out to Erica Polanco Webb, who referred this book on her page. If you don't know who Erica is, she is all about motherhood and talking about the struggles of motherhood. She has a wonderful big blended family, and she has some amazing content out there. If you don't know who Erica is, please find out about Erica, because she shares a lot of useful stuff in just parenting and being a mom and motherhood, and I love it.
You gonna share that in the We Gonna Talk group?
Yes, she's been a guest on the show before when we've had our adultism talk some years back. Because most of you may not know that We Gonna Talk has 2 years in the making now. We didn't have our 2-year anniversary, but that's okay. We pushing forward anyway. But yes, it's 2 years in the making here and going. But her book, the book that she referred for us to read, is called Mother Hunger, and I've been audio booking this book, and it is amazing. Even as someone, Mother Hunger. So even as someone very trauma informed, someone that is in the healing journey, that has a huge level of self-awareness about certain things of my own trauma, this book hits so deep. I had to cut it off and process, where I have to do it chapter by chapter. I'm like, we need to process on this. It's so deep rooted. It just has so much meat and potatoes in there for everybody. Even the vegan eaters out there will say it's the mushroom meat, the oyster, the earth boogers that I don't know. But definitely, I encourage you all to look more into Mother Hunger. It talks about how having a strained relationship with your maternal portion of your family can also affect trauma, and how it plays into a lot of behavior. And so it's just a really dope book. It's a really impactful book. So just,
I firsthand have conversations with elders and everyone in between about how specifically, and maybe this could be We Gonna Talk conversation. We can get some men folk on the line and some women folk on the line about how traumatic mothers how that impacts their sons and how that impacts their relationship with women.
Absolutely needs to be a we gonna talk moment. I am in the process of creating the we gonna talk schedule because we about to get back up and running on a more consistent bi-weekly basis and be looking out for some more we gonna talk stuff coming to you. But yes, absolutely, that is super important. And I think I shared this at the mental health panel, how that part was super important for me when I found out that I was going to be having a son. I realized that even though I knew I was going to love on these babies hard, I started doing the self work of what um, daddy issues, what male issues I may have, so I can make sure that I wasn't allowing those to taint the type of relationship I had with my son and the type of motherhood that I was, giving him. So I was like, well, let me think about the ways that I've had some male trauma in my life and figure out how not to allow that to get in the way of me being a good mother to him. And so I think that a lot of women may not understand how those issues play a role. Sometimes you may think it's just about talking bad about that child's father or talking bad to that son, but sometimes it's about being overcompensating when it comes to stuff and smothering them and having them take on the role of your companion and be responsible for you. So there is a lot we could talk about when we talk about that. So be looking out for upcoming info on that. Love to have some men who are willing to have that conversation come on and talk about how their parental relationships have shaped them into adulthood. That is a generational trauma, a curse that we're trying to break. So we got a lot more to talk about, a lot more to cover here. We gonna talk. Thank y'all for always sticking with us, always showing up when it's time and riding with us to the 9:30 mark. We still got folks on the line.
They we in here.
But we in it. And
don't them the original folks that's been around to 10 p.m.
from the beginnings, right? Please keep in mind, we want to hear from you about what was in your backpack. I would love to see this hashtag trend and going. So you'll be seeing me post it a lot and just really trying to get the conversation started as we head into the new school year, but in practicing empathy about children and the things that they're up against this year as they go into a new academic school year. So let's support our babies. Let's be empathetic. Let's be graceful. Let's be nurturing. Let's be supportive. And I'm wishing each and every person's little one a safe, successful school year. Yes. We love y'all. And we gonna talk, and we will be talking again in 2 weeks. So
give yourself grace. Get them kids grace. Shout out to all the parents buying uniforms and school supplies because, baby, my shopping cart is expensive right now. I was like, next.
That's the one thing I'll remember. I am not a uniform parent. I know it's a lot of parents out there that love uniform. To me, I just see an extra set of clothes because they still need clothes for when you're trying to live life and go out and do stuff. Girl. So you got to buy uniform clothes. And then I don't know about y'all. I swear my kids, nothing on them grow but their legs. I feel like I buy pants every month. It's so frustrating. It's like hands, legs, feet, and hair. That's it. That's the only thing that's growing. Legs, feet, and hair. That's it. Nothing else. That's all.
So
that's
parents, bless all y'all and y'all pockets for this back
Amen.
school year.
You need it. We gonna talk about some donations. We love y'all. Good night.